All right.
Turning it to Andrea.
Great, thank you, Blanca. So let's kick off this panel, and I will introduce each of our panelists, starting with Jennifer Henderson. So Jen attended Rose-Hulman Institute of Technologies. She's a certified Agile Scrum Master and a certified SAFe program consultant. Jen is currently the executive lead of core technology at TD Bank. She's formerly worked in executive leadership roles at PNC, Capital One, Rovion Inc., Possible, WPP, and Valley Infosystems. Jen has a long history of supporting women in technology and LGBTQ+ causes. She was a board member of GLSEN Cincinnati, AIDS Volunteers of Cincinnati, and the career development lead for the Chicago chapter of Women Who Code, and chaired the Trans Queer Plus subcommittee of Outfront, Capital One's LGBTQ+ business resource group. Jen currently serves on the board of directors for Out and Equal Workplace Associates and the executive advisory board of Lesbians Who Tech and Allies. As an advocate for LGBTQ+ rights and for her work on transgender policies at WPP, she was named Grand Marshal of the 2016 Cincinnati Pride Parade and was honored as Out and Equal's 2018 Audi Champion of the Year Award. Welcome, Jen.
Nice to be here.
Right, Vanessa Jupe. Vanessa is passionate about supporting women and has a digital plus human approach to the tech world. She's building her company Leva into a trusted brand for women and mothers. Leva meets new mothers where they are to ensure that they get the support and answers they need to make good decisions for themselves and their families. Vanessa spent 20 years working in the world of internet technology, beginning as a web developer and organically evolving into a product management leader. She's worked for H&R Block, USAA, and DirecTV, where she led teams responsible for launching new digital products, increasing customer sentiment, and substantially increasing profitability. Vanessa previously taught product management for General Assembly and served on their product management standards board. She holds her BBA in information systems from the University of Incarnate Word and Master's of Science in Technology Commercialization from UT Austin McCombs School of Business. Thank you, Vanessa. And last but certainly not least, we have Denise Rogers. Denise is an accomplished technologist with extensive experience in leading architectural strategies and delivery, with focus on the introduction of newer emerging technologies and data management. She currently serves as a vice president of enterprise architecture for Northwestern Mutual and is accountable for the simplification and optimization of the extensive data ecosystems for Northwestern Mutual. This includes driving architectural decisions toward cloud technology footprints, onboarding newer technologies, and providing guidance and oversight on strategic business initiatives. Prior to NM, Denise served in various engineering and architecture leadership roles, primarily in the insurance and financial industries focused on the enablement of data lakes, analytics footprints, AI, and data lifecycle management. She currently owns a patent for SQL predictive modeling application. Denise resides in Connecticut and has been a practicing yogi for 20 years. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
So let's jump into our conversation. But first, I want to give each of the panelists an opportunity to tell us a little bit about your journey to this position. Now, we've heard your extensive and accomplished bios, but we'd love to hear a little bit more about the journey and any challenges that you might have encountered along the way. I can throw it over to Denise to start.
Sure. Thank you, Andrea. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having me here. This is an esteemed panel, and it's just super cool to be able to speak and meet with people that I've not met before. So I feel like I've expanded my network and a group of friends. So a little bit about me and my journey. I am a self-professed geek. I love computer science, especially data. I started off in as a developer on the infrastructure side, doing mostly engineering work, but I always had this thirst for learning, very curious. And, I just did not want to do the same thing over and over again, as many as my colleagues were at the time. And so I just prided myself on just taking risks, leveraging different opportunities to learn, to grow, taking on new roles. Even with a certain level of uncertainty, I figured I'd either win in that role or I will learn more about myself and grow as a professional and as a person. And I really feel strongly that it has helped to propel me to where I am today. I've had the pleasure of working with a number of people and being mentored by quite a few people along the way. That's really enabled me to become the executive that you see sitting here today wearing a Chanel brooch / necklace. So I really feel that part of my journey is really my curiosity, my thirst for learning, but also just being in the computer science space, in the data space, in the space that I live in now, because it's constantly evolving, constantly growing. And there's so much more to be done. And I embrace every day that I open up my laptop. So this is a little bit about me and how I come to be here today.
Fantastic. Thank you. Vanessa.
All right. So I fell in love with technology when I was in high school. I was really into literature, reading, writing, and also then computer programming. I remember being in a Turbo Pascal class, if that dates me, sorry, but Turbo Pascal class in high school. And it was so much fun. I would like do my program and I would get it done faster than anyone in class. And then I would sit there and write like these drama, murder, mystery stories. So that's a little bit about how my psyche works, I guess. And then I ended up at information systems major, just because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew it had to be computer oriented. And I really enjoyed working on any sort of programming problem, and turns out I was pretty good at it. I was in a couple of clubs in college that we would go compete in programming competitions. And our team won a couple of them, and that was really rewarding. And so I was like, yes, this is what I should do with my life. My first computer programming job was actually a couple years after graduating from college, because I was in San Antonio, Texas, where there weren't a lot of jobs in the early 2000s. But I ended up moving to New York City and getting a job with JetBlue Airways. And I remember very clearly my first day there, we were installing Macromedia Dreamweaver on my computer. And my boss looks at me and he goes, do you remember this? He goes, are you installing this in code view or developer view or design view? Like code view or design view? And I was like, is code view the right answer? And it's like, yes, it is. Anyhow, I had that job for a while. It was really fun. And then I thought I was staying in the same space. I ended up moving over to DirecTV. And that's really how I ended up getting out of programming, which was not my intent. I was hired as a web producer and I did not know what that meant. But apparently it meant more like pulling things together and setting strategy and working on requirements and all of that fun stuff. So I really, really enjoyed that job. I hated it taking my hands off the keyboard and having that direct impact on the users and their experience, but I loved building a team. I loved learning product management, leading people, understanding the user's perspective and there's that side of things. And it was just incredibly rewarding. I ended up moving from DirecTV to USAA, where I led the investment experience. So all of the things that you would interact with. Yes, somebody remembers Turbo Pascal. I love it. I just got a private message. Thank you, Sherry. So all of the things that you would interact with, if you were going to place a stock trade, open an account, invest in an ETF, like my team did all of that. Plus I brought in training and transformed our digital team into product managers. So that was really cool. And I had a bit of a mixed bag. So I know you wanted us to talk about some of our challenges as well. I had a mixed bag at USAA. I had a really good experience on one hand, where I had one of the best leaders I've ever had in my life. His name was a new warrior. I felt like he really cared about me. He was super proud of me. He gave me so much latitude to do things that I wanted to do. But I spent 6.5 years on the East Coast, and I was like used to being very direct with my communication. It worked out really well in New York City. It did not work so well back in San Antonio, Texas. And I just remember being told that I was abrasive and aggressive and too assertive. I had sharp elbows, all those things. And so I went on maternity leave with when I had my baby. My boss had left, so there was an opening for his position, and I will talk about allies later, but there was this amazing vice president in the line of business I supported that wrote this great note to the head of our digital department saying, you should put Vanessa in that AVP role. She's amazing. She's a great executive already, like give her this opportunity. And I didn't even get to an interview for it. They hired a man from outside the company. And so when I got back, I was like, don't really care, don't really want to stay here. And then H&R Block came calling, and it was a VP role with a ton more money. And I was like, yes, which is why I'm in Kansas City now. Fast forward 3 years, I ended up wanting to leave H&R Block, got a job with an insurtech startup. I was only there for a year. That was a shit show. But anyway, I learned how much money can be wasted on startups, and also realized I had saved a lot of money because, working as a leader, as an executive, you make a good amount of money. I've never had to spend that much money to be happy. So I saved a lot of money and decided I would do my own startup based on my experiences as a woman and becoming a mother, and realizing how ridiculously difficult that is and how little actually good support and scientific information is available. And I like data and I like science. So I wanted to combine all of those things into something that could really help women. So I have these really grand goals with my company, which is called Leva, which means to elevate, to lift. And so my goals are to help women throughout their entire life experiences as this company grows. But we're really starting at that inflection point of becoming a mother, because it's completely nuts. So that's a bit about my journey.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. And Jen.
Well, you threw down the gauntlet, so I'm going to have to go with it. I've been in technology for 35 years. My first computer was when I was 8 years old. A Timex Sinclair 1000. It had all of 2K of RAM, and you saved your programs on a cassette recorder. My first paid role was at the age of 16 when I was an intern at a major oil company. I was raised in the high desert of Colorado. And that was a great experience for me, having access to both Chevron and the local community college, where I really learned how to program. Went to Rose-Hulman as a physics major because I thought I already knew everything about computers. So why would I be a computer science major? That's silly. But moving forward, multiple entrepreneur, I've started 2 different companies. One was in fax on demand software, and the other one was in streaming media. I have a patent on a specific type of media for the early web and some of my ads. I was lucky enough to get an article in USA Today in which they declared my ad type to be the most annoying ad ever created. So I've got that. That's wonderful. Fast forward past that, stayed in marketing technology for about 15 years until I moved over to banking. Moved over to banking with Capital One being my first bank that I worked for, originally in Chicago to work on our card partnership technology up in Canada. And then I moved on to the retail bank, where we did some of the seminal work on serverless technology for some of our functionality. I'm still a Capital One customer because when I see something wrong in the website or the app, I know who to knock. I still have phone numbers to knock on doors to say, hey, there's a bug in your software, please fix this. Moved on to PNC, where I became the head of innovation for their retail lending group there. Also was the head of cloud adoption for that company. Recently moved over to TD Bank, which is interesting being an American working for a Canadian company. TD Bank, if you're not familiar, has a large presence across the East Coast. But they are not just the largest bank in Canada, they are the largest company, period, in Canada. And I will say working for an extremely large company is somewhat challenging. As far as challenges for me, it was interesting you talking about your review, because I got my review from the first year of working at TD, and there were 2 things that stood out. One was scary smart, which I assume is a good thing, even though it had the word scary in it. And 2 was, but a little too American. So I'm not sure exactly what to do with that. And I've been struggling a little bit on that, but maybe it's being in Chicago or Philadelphia and bringing that to the way that I speak to folks who are very, very Canadian and very deferential around how they work with each other and that type of thing. The other thing I would say is, being a woman of a trans experience, I'm somebody who challenges companies to accept me and to honor my bringing my entire self to work. So when I come into a company, I look at what is their healthcare plan for LGBTQ people? What is their HRC ranking for CEI? Are they actually living up to those promises that they're putting in their social media when Pride comes around and all that kind of stuff? So I'm a person who's not afraid to pick up the phone and talk to our lead counsel when there's bathroom bills in Texas, or talk to our marketing department when they're saying, hey, we're going to do this rainbow colored card for credit card. Well, but how does it help the LGBTQ community other than you slapping a rainbow on it? So a lot of the work that I do is around holding companies up to their promise of what they're trying to make. I will say, though, that because of my weird sort of resume that I have, being an entrepreneur and jumping from industry to industry, I'm kind of brought in at a lower level than I'm able to actually accomplish, and then have to work my way up. One of the reasons that I moved to TD Bank was it was a much larger portion of the bank than I was currently doing at PNC in that role. So I went from having only a handful of direct employees to now having over 700 in my particular group, and a budget of like $130 million from just payroll alone. Because quite frankly, they gave me the systems that if they go down, the entire bank goes down. So it's a very, very important role, but it's a role that is a little different from what I've had in the past. I'm enjoying it, but I really do like the fact that with 35 years of experience, I've done almost every job in technology. You name it, DBAs, programmers. I've probably forgotten more computer languages than I currently know. And therefore, I have a lot of empathy for people who are in technology and always look at it at that level. So I kind of go from, let's make this decision, and then I can immediately my head jump to, what does that mean for a junior developer? What does that mean for somebody who's their first job or whatever? What's their experience like?
Perfect. Well, bravo. And we need more scary, smart, very American leaders like you. So the theme of this year's International Women's Day, as you've probably heard, is Embrace Equity, which quite frankly, when I heard it, kind of took me aback and made me think. And it's actually been a more divisive theme than previous themes too, because it's clear that, you know, as women, this is not something that we currently have today. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about gender equity versus gender equality, and why it's important to distinguish between the two, and what does embracing equity really mean to you? And I'll throw it out to Vanessa to start.
I was really hoping to hear from somebody more informed on the topic, but no, that's okay. I'm happy to start. You know, it's an interesting thing. I feel a little bit like maybe bad because I've been sending Andrea stuff on the side, like, hey, I find like, equity to me is such a newer term and a newer concept when you think about like women and people of color and everything else. It's like, we haven't really, at least from my experience, we haven't been talking about that much. It's always been more like equal, like we should be equal. We should be talking about equality. Why are we talking about equity now? And so I was like, is that just me? Was that my own ignorance? I should really discover if it was. So I went to my favorite place, which is the Google web search trends. And what it turns out is that, you know, people have been looking up equity forever, but equity versus equality is a very new search in the last, 2 years or so, I'd say. And what does equity mean? It has spiked in the last 2 years. So definitely like newer in the way that we're using that term. So to me, I feel like, so equity basically is, we know people are not being treated equally. We know people don't all come from the same place. They don't have all the same resources. So we need to kind of give them things to help them get to an even playing field. So when I think about equity, I think about things like affirmative action, Title IX, things that have been put into place to try to give people that have been disadvantaged a better start and a better playing field. But what I think I think we're all really after is that actual equality,
Yes.
not give us these things to benefit us right now. So hopefully we can kind of have some sort of scratch our way to like something, decent, but really we want equality. We want to be treated and seen and have that experience of being equal. So I'm not the biggest fan of the whole like equity concept in and as of, it's being used right now. And the embrace equity thing to me was not something I was happy about. I much more at this point would say demand change so we could have true equality. That's my perspective.
I love that.
I mean, I think though, equity resonates really for me. And the reason for this is that equality means that it can be legislated, it can be governed. You can't do this to this person because they look different, or you can't treat that other person because of their religious beliefs and all that good stuff. But equity is, to me, having access to the same set of rules, having the information the same as somebody who doesn't look like me, so that, to your point, Vanessa, the playing field is level. And in a lot of instances, and I can tell you in my career, I didn't have access. And I always thought that all I had to do is work hard, they will notice it, and then good things will happen. But it doesn't work that way.
Unfortunately, right?
And it's until I had mentors and I had allies and champions that pulled me aside and said, look up from your laptop, go have lunch with this person, go introduce yourself to this. I'm going to pull you into that my eyes were always like, oh, that's how this works. And then people started to see me. And that's what equity is, right? Is giving each of us access to the same set of resources to learn the rules that our white male counterparts, to be honest, have in their toolkit, I like to say, since they started working. And it's just really giving us the same set of rules to operate within, so that we too can have not just a seat at the table, but the seat at the table is not a folding chair, So that's what it means for me.
Well, and I would say we know that equality is not working. When you look at the numbers for women in technology, we're only about, I think the latest numbers were like around 26%. If you go across all the Fortune 500s, only 26% of technologists are identify as women. And that's actually down 2% over COVID. We're actually going backwards. You have very small percentages of women who are graduating from colleges with IT tech degrees or even degrees in STEM fields. And so we know it's not working. The average, I think it's something along the lines of 40% of women will leave technology after 7 years if they are a technologist. It's not being served. So one of the things that we look at is we constantly talk about mentorship. And mentorship is great. I get access to somebody, I can ask them questions. Mentorship doesn't have to be with somebody above me. It can be equal as far as where you are in the organization. They talk about reverse mentorship, where you have an executive who's now learning about somebody who's new to the company and that type of thing. But there's also coaching and there's sponsorship. Coaching is what a good manager should do. I'm trying to get you to do the best for the job role that you have. Sponsorship is I, as somebody who has accomplished something, I'm going to put my own political capital down to say, I need to pull you forward. This is somebody we should be concentrating on. This is somebody that we should do. And so therefore, when we look at the percentages that we have with female representation in technology, we should have every single executive sponsoring somebody and pulling them forward, especially if there's somebody who has visible intersectionality. because that's effective too. It's not just being a woman, but being a woman of color or being a woman with a disability. There's all kinds of things that can affect what people think you can and cannot do. And it's up to executives to realize, no, we honor this person for who they are. And in fact, I'm going to use my own capital to give them a few additional opportunities. So it's not equality. Not everybody's going to get that sponsor, but it's equity. It's what that group needs in order to get to equality.
Just to, I completely agree. To tag on to the networking and the coaching, the mentorship, the sponsorship, you know, what can we do, and how can we expand women's links to each other to find these mentors, to find these sponsors? I often liken it to dating, right? It's you know, you cast a wide net, but it really is, it's the synergy, it's the relationship. How can we as leaders start to facilitate those connections?
I would say Women Who Code is a good example of it. Just having a chance for people to get together, to get to know each other, to get to know each other outside of their workday. One of the things that I always, especially Cap One was great with this, by the way. I always go back to Cap One. Cap One's BRG groups, you know, groups of affinity groups, whether it's you know, people who are in the military, people who are LGBTQ, women, and then underneath that, you know, women in technology, because Cap One was such big technology provider, and there was such a large group that was specific to women in technology. I always recommended to everybody who worked for me to get into one of those groups, because it allows you then to interact with somebody that you probably don't interact on a day-to-day basis, and then they can get to know you. And so then you would have access to executives and people who are above you by a rank or two in a context outside of your day-to-day work, because it's very, we can talk about, you know, LGBTQ issues, but one of the questions is going to be, so what do you do here at Cap One? What exactly is your job? And then, you know, 2-3 months down the road, they go, hey, I met a really cool software development person. I think I should talk to them about filling this new role before I go outside of our company.
Yeah, the thing of it is though that I am a little hinky about doing that outreach, to be honest, because I sometimes think that, you know, to be a sponsor, to be an ally, to mentor someone, they have to have that woman has to have an open mind for it. And if they're just like, I'm cool with how, you know, I'm operating, my career is fine, it doesn't work. It really has to be an openness and a willingness. It's like, you know, I kind of like where you're sitting, Denise, or I kind of like what you're doing, Jen or Vanessa. How do I get there? So there has to be that interest, there has to be that curiosity, and there has to be that outreach. That's the only way it's going to work. And in that way, then I or Jen or Vanessa or whoever can start to pull them along. It's like, hey, you need to do this. When you're on a Zoom call, you need to do that. So I think that's part of it too, right? I think this is an excellent forum because people say, oh yeah, these are really cool people, I'm going to reach out to them. But I also think that that person who has a goal in mind or something that they want to accomplish in their career path, I think that part of the equation is for them to also reach out to somebody that they're comfortable with talking to. It's like, how do I get there? So I think that's part of it too.
And I think the important part of that is representation matters.
Yeah.
We need more women in the executive suite. We need more women who have climbed that ladder so that people can see that it actually can be done.
Yes. Yes.
And so and that's for me, you know, to be very personal, you know, I had 40 years of white male privilege. And now that I look back and I see all the folks that didn't make it or decided to drop out, I need to pay it forward because I want to show that you can make it no matter what your difference is. And it's actually with my work that I do in Not Equal, we're starting to do a lot of work on pipelining LGBTQ people into leadership and executive roles. And I know for a fact, an absolute fact, of the Fortune 2000 that are out there, I can literally count the number of open trans executives on two hands, less than two hands. And I probably have all their phone numbers in my phone right this second. And for that population, the gender expansive population, which is being shown in greater and greater numbers as far as college graduates, where we're seeing more and more people who are identifying as queer. It's very important for them to see that they have a runway to getting to the top of the companies that they work for. Otherwise, they're just going to drop out. It's just like, why do I bother? Nobody up there looks like me. Nobody up there sounds like me. Why am I even trying?
True.
Very true. I love some of the statistics that you had cited, Jen. So one of the things that I look forward to every year is the McKinsey Women in the Workplace study. So it's just a very comprehensive, just very compelling read. And they talk about something called the broken rung. So it's the broken rung to the first step of management. And so they've been doing this study for 8 years, and 8 years, it slowly inches up, but it is, it's still, for every 100 men that are promoted from entry level to managers, only 87 women are promoted. Right. Only 82 women of color are promoted. So like clearly men are outnumbering women from the manager level. And so women simply can't catch up. So, the question I'd like to throw out to the panel is, where's an industry are we just getting it wrong? Where's this barrier to leadership? And then, on the flip side of that, where have you seen gender equality actually, done right? So where should we look for examples of this actually, of it working and moving forward?
I don't know. It depends on what your definition is of done right. I think in corporate America, there are pockets of where it's working well. And there are pockets where there's lots of room for improvement. I think in the companies that I've worked in, where I've seen it really be successful is when, to an earlier point, that a senior leader has decided to spend some political capital to accelerate the path for someone that does not look like him, a woman of color, and bring her along and not just mentor her, but bring her into the room with other senior leaders so that she can be seen. Where it hasn't worked well in what I've experienced and what I've seen across my industry is everybody nods their head when it comes to equality and equity and say, yeah, we have to do something, rah, 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 let's go. But when it comes time to actually execute, it's crickets. Nobody says anything, nobody does anything. And it's the gargle, rinse, repeat, because it's so embedded, that unconscious bias, that, on paper, everything looks really cool and very crisp. But because of so much of that unconscious bias, they don't even know that it's happening. I give you an example. At an offsite, and we're talking about, things that we should be doing architecturally. And, one of my colleagues says, yeah, I think, we need a blacklist and a whitelist here. The blacklist are the things that are not going well. And I'm like, hold on, hold the phone, choose another color, choose another set of colors. And, he got red in the face. And he just had a mail-ox moment that said, oh man, I can't believe I just did that. And that's what I mean, is we all have really nice literature in all of the websites and blah, blah, blah. But when it comes time to actually doing the work, we are lacking there, because I think that if for a number of various reasons, there is still that embedded unconscious bias that we have allowed folks to get away with over time and not call it out, and I think that where I've seen it really worked is when that unconscious bias is challenged. It's like, why can you talk to this person? Can you bring this other person along? Let's have you work in this particular environment to bring along someone else, or check yourself. What are you doing here? And call it out. And to the point now where the mentees that I have, the people that I'm sponsoring, I'm really proud to say that they span the spectrum. They're both men and women, and people of color. And, I'm bringing them along, and I think it's working out well, but we have to call out unconscious bias when we see it. And I think that's a huge barrier for us right now, quite frankly.
I think we have a lot of bias of what leadership work is for certain roles. So, when you look at Fortune 500 CEOs, only 10% are women. Where the C levels in corporate America, there's only 2 roles where women have a slightly are ahead, and that's Chief Diversity Officer and Chief HR Officer. Those are the only 2 roles in which women have a majority. So obviously people are looking for a certain type to fill those roles, but don't see that type as being able to fill other roles as you move up. And when you look at why that happens is because, quite frankly, I've talked about this before, which is that there's a thing called the mirror effect. And the mirror effect essentially says, when you're near something, even if it's something unpleasant, the more you're near it, the more you become comfortable with it. So it's one of the reasons why in marketing you see like Coors and Bud Light signs everywhere, because you get so used to seeing that it may be the crappiest beer around, but at least I'm used to it. I'm somewhat comfortable with it, whatever. So what's the most powerful mirror effect that a person can have? Themselves. They look at the mirror every morning. And so they are most comfortable with people that represent themselves. And so if men are in leadership and they're looking for somebody that they are comfortable enough to give a leadership opportunity to, the first person they're going to look at is somebody that in some way resembles themselves. And we've got to break that. And so one of the things that Cap One right before I left that I kind of put up there was out of our retail business in technology, when I looked at the number of people who had gotten promotions, there were 60 promotions one year, 2 women, and one had left. One had actually left the company. So 1 woman out of 60 in my area of the business. And I pointed that out, considering one of the pillars of Capital One is D&I and respecting diversity. And I was like, if that's the case, then every single executive that's over this group that I could see the data for should not get the highest bonus that they're eligible for, because they are missing a number. It should have at very least have matched our population when you looked at those promotional roles.
Well said. I agree with you 100% about it should match the population. I mean, let's be realistic. And a million different stories are going through my head. I'm like, which one makes the most sense to share? But I like what was said earlier. Denise pointed it out, like, you've got to call it out when you see something being done the wrong way, people saying things the wrong way, like a blacklist and a whitelist. I mean, come on, you got to call it out, right? And I remember being in a meeting. It was an executive team meeting for our digital department. And so it was only leaders in the room, and we were talking about our top and bottom talent, right? Like, that's who you talk about when you have hundreds of people in your organization. You only talk about those. And it was like ridiculous. Like, so just picture like long tables, probably 30 people in a room. And at this point, they had been talking about all of these women that are high performers. But the word that kept coming up was aggressive. Like, oh, she's great, she does this and that, but she's a little too aggressive. Oh, she's great, this and that, a little too aggressive. And finally, I said, hey, hold on. I just, and I'm trying to be very politically correct about the way I said it, because at this point I'd also been called aggressive. So at any rate, not in this meeting, but at other points in this job, I said, I wonder, does anyone else happen to notice a recurring phrase that's being used to describe some of these top talent women? And so fortunately there was a lady behind me and she said, oh yeah, I was actually just noticing that I've been hearing the word aggressive. And I was like, me too. That seems a little interesting that somehow all of these women can be top performers and yet we're calling them aggressive, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I haven't been at a place that it's done where I would say it's done really, really well. I haven't been at a place where I feel like they do a great job of like setting diversity goals and actually sticking to the diversity goals. I think what needs to be done and is that like actual, like really tangible and aggressive, to use that word, commitments need to be set and actually measured and tracked and delivered on. And if you don't deliver on them, then I think there should be real ramifications for not delivering on those things. That's what I think would actually drive change, not what's happening right now.
Very well said. I want to do a quick time check because I could continue this conversation for another 3 hours. But I think we have time for maybe a few questions. If there's anybody out there that has questions for our panelists, feel free to unmute yourself or you can drop it into the chat.
I'm sensing a drum roll.
Speaking of drum rolls, do we want to do a quick raffle?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, sure.
Do that. All right, so Blanca has a
That's cool.
a wheel of names. This is for what? What are we raffling off here?
I've been talking on mute this whole time. So Jackie is our lucky winner for our Women Who Code swag. Jackie, if you can privately message me on the chat and with your email and your contact info, and we'll make sure that you get that swag.
Yep, we need email addresses for raffle prizes. That's how we will be distributing them. Okay.
Turning it back to our panelists.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to, first of all, thank our panelists for all of the insight. I know that this is something, so this will be on our YouTube channel, the Women Who Code YouTube channel, and I'm definitely going to watch it again because there's so many great nuggets that have emerged in this conversation. So just really quickly wanted to ask the panelists, the best piece of advice that you've ever been given, and what is one action item that everybody in the audience can take away to elevate a woman in their lives tomorrow. I'll start with Jen.
Oh boy, best piece of advice. Treat others like you'd like to be treated. I mean, like I said, we've all had a bad day, we've had good days. We've got ideas. We just want to be honored as to who we are and what we do. So treat others as well. For helping a woman in your company or somebody that make an introduction. If you have the ability to say, hey, I've got this really cool friend of mine who I think would be an amazing person for us to either bring into the company, or somebody who's already working in the company saying, hey, I think there's a stretch role for you where you could really show off the skills that you have. Make that introduction to whoever can make that decision.
Thank you. Denise?
This is a tough question, man, to ask me that. So I would say some of the best advice I've been given is to be my authentic self. I am Jamaican and I tend to neutralize my tone to sound a little bit more American, and that's a lot of work. So it was just to bring my authentic self. And the second thing that I was told is never quit tech. You're a really good technologist, because I was on the cusp. I was just like, this sucks, I'm out. And I was told by mentors, just like, no, you're really talented, don't give up, keep pushing through. It's going to be hard sometimes, but if you love the space, stay in the space. So in terms of, what was the other question, Andrea? Bringing somebody along?
Yep. What can somebody do to elevate a woman in their lives?
Yeah, I would say, you know, take a look around you, introduce yourself, be more accessible, say, hey, I noticed that you just joined, or you're new to our group. Let's go to Starbucks and have a coffee, and let's talk about, you know, what it's like to be here in this new company, or whatever that thing is. But it's really about open up our arms. Really, it's like, hey, let's I have a friend who I think would be awesome for you to be paired with. I just think that we should have an open mind, but also look around us, and I always say we either get there together, we don't get there at all, but really look around to see who's new, who you would like to introduce a new person to, and just do it.
Thank you. And Vanessa?
Great advice. And yes, it's wonderful. The thing that I love the most, I guess, advice-wise that I've received that has really truly made a difference in my life is really around mindfulness and meditation, and the ability to change your current reality based on the thoughts that you have. And so if anyone in here is not super into that stuff, like really look into it, because it has made a dramatic difference in my life, and how much more potential I see in the world, and positivity and all of that. As far as how you can help other women, I have so many ideas and not enough time. If you don't know who Bozomo St. John is, please look her up. She's amazing. Oh, yeah. She's on Instagram as Badass Boz. She's on LinkedIn. Everything she says and does is incredible. One of my favorite things that she has talked about is having a group of women, and she said like 3 women. I don't think you have to limit it. I think you could have it like thousands of women. But just create a group of women that you will say their name in a room, right? Or you will recommend to this job, or you will promote yourself. And I have done that so many times. Like I was kind of doing it before, but not really thinking about it like consciously. But when I heard her say it, I was like, oh, I'm going to make a way more conscious effort to do this. And so I've had articles written about me, and I've always talked about other women that have inspired me. I've been able to like highlight women on social media in other ways, like with other people. And it always kind of comes back to you in some way or another, right? Like I talked about this woman that I was a peer of, and she was actually a little junior to me at a company I worked at. In an article, it got published. Her employer saw it and was so excited that she was mentioned in this article that they did their own press release about her. And it was really touching to her that happened, right? So all these things like can really help all of us if we support each other. And then the other thing that I'd say, because I want to add one more, is just be open and transparent. You know, there's so much that we keep secret in the society that doesn't do us any good. So like our salaries, right? I went from making really not a great salary as an executive to making what I felt like was a really great salary as an executive. And I tell the people that want mentorship from me very openly, here's what I was making, here's how I negotiated, here's what I was making before I left that place, here's where I went, because it's not going to do me any good to keep that secret, and it helps them. And so I have given so many people individual advice on how you negotiate salaries. So anyway, just be there for each other, be open. Like we can only do better in this world if we help one another. Helping each other as women is the only way that we're going to make a massive actual difference in the world. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you all. And then Blanca, we have one more raffle prize to give. And then we also have the Leva prize as well. So if anybody is an expectant mother, a new mother, knows a new mother, please reach out to Blanca so she can hook you up with that prize.
Awesome. Let's do the next one. So this is for a $25 Amazon gift card that was actually sponsored by Adage Technologies. And our winner is Erica.
Yay, Erica. All right, so shoot your email address to Blanca. Or you can, I think mine's probably the easiest. It's just Andrea@womenwhocode.com. So if you are a raffle winner, and yes, Vanessa, I am in for the book club. I am a huge fan.
I've just started it and I can't put it down. I would love to discuss it with some other ladies.
Awesome. All right, we're doing this.
Yes, for sure. All right. Well, thank you for your time. We are right at 5 o'clock. This has been amazing. It filled my cup. I hope it filled everybody else's as well.
Yes.
So go forth and conquer.
Thank you
for
very
having
much.
us.
Pleasure
Thank
meeting you
you.
all. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks.
So
Bye.
thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Jen. Thanks, everyone.